most people do nothing most of the time. And that's the biggest problem. It's really public inaction, public indifference. There were two recent cases that you may know about. 2 weeks ago in New York, a homeless man came to the aid of a woman who was being attacked. And he himself got stabbed by the attacker who ran away. He fell down, and a surveillance camera caught dozens of people passing by, looking at him, and not a single person stopped to call 911 to help, and he bled to death. So here's a person being a good Samaritan who gets hurt and ends up being killed because no one came to his aid. 2 weeks, I think a month or two earlier in California, and not far from where I live, in Richmond, California, a 15-year-old girl, probably your age, was coming out of a school party and was gang raped by a dozen men and boys for an hour or two, and at least 20 people were watching. Some of them, and no one called 911. In fact, even worse, some of them were texting to their friends what they were seeing. This is outrageous. I mean, you know, what it revived was back in the 1960s, there was a woman named Kitty Genovese in New York City, in Queens, who some random guy, who actually was mentally ill, you know, just picked her out. First woman who gets off the bus, he stalks, he starts stabbing her, he starts raping her, she screams, and people heard it, and no one came to her aid, and finally she was killed and murdered. And it became famous, the Kitty Genovese case. People were shocked. The newspapers all over the country said, what's wrong with New Yorkers? You know, what's wrong with our society? There was at least a public outcry against this indifference, this inaction. And now, for some reason, and it's not clear why, more and more we say, oh, that's the way it is. You know, people don't help. But once you get that mentality, people don't help, then when you don't help, you say, well, that's the norm. Not to help is the definition of the situation, rather than, you know, what every society has to instill in young people is, when my time comes, I will be the Good Samaritan. And the Good Samaritan is the most popular parable, if you will, in the whole Bible. That when someone is in distress, a person comes and helps them in every way possible. And the Bible says this is the model, you know, that is, treat your neighbor as you would treat me, as you would treat God, or as you would have them treat you. So it's the basis of the golden rule. You can't have a functioning society without that. And the question is that being lost in America now? And if so, why? I don't know the answer. That's an interesting thing for you guys to discuss after this. Another question? I think we have 5 more minutes. For somebody I haven't heard from. People hiding in the back there. Okay, yes.
Do you think it's possible to be...
Your name?
Kathy.
Kathy, oh.
Do you think it's possible to be both a hero and a villain?
Say that again?
Do you think it's possible to be both a hero and a villain?
Yeah, it's a great question, of course. The difference is who is making the attribution. You know, heroes and villains are social constructions. So that Hitler, to us, was clearly one of the worst villains of all time. If you were in the classroom you're in now, and it was 1940, it was 1939 in Berlin, anywhere in Germany, he would be the hero. You would be part of the Hitlerjugend. You'd be wearing T-shirts with his picture on it. You would be saluting. You would want to be part of the SS if you were a man. In the same way, up to now, if you were a suicide bomber in Palestine or in Palestine, you would be a hero in your neighborhood. There would be a poster of you. You would be a martyr for Allah. But to Jews in Israel, you would be a monster because you blew up a bus which killed innocent women and children. So heroes and villains, the very same act is seen as positive or negative, seen as good or evil, depending on the social construction. Let me give you another interesting example of, it's not only the attribution, but also what do we know about the hero? So Christopher Columbus is a great hero in America. We have Columbus Day, October 12th. The whole country celebrates it, especially where I live in San Francisco, which has a big Italian population. We have our main street is called Columbus Avenue. On October 12th, there was always a ceremony. A boat would pull up, in the harbor. This old Italian guy would get off, and there'd be people dressed like Indians throwing flowers and all kind of things. And he'd parade down Columbus Avenue. Until a few years ago, he gets off the boat, and people are throwing tomatoes and saying, killer, rapist, genocidal monster. And he said, I was a hero last year. What happened? What happened is we now have new information that Columbus and his crew, in fact, were monsters. They were there only for the gold. They killed, they raped, they looted. And so now you have new information which forces us to revise our conception of this man and what he did. Not heroically discovering America, if you will. That was really done long before 1492. But so now we say, no, he's not a hero anymore. What he did was not heroic in any sense. The same way, Alexander the Great. There's only one person in history who gets that name, the Great, after your name. Well, he was great in the sense that at age of 21, he began to conquer the known world. He comes from a little town in Greece, in Macedonia, and he travels on foot, on camel, on donkey, across the continent until he gets to India. He captures Turkey, all these countries across the continent, and then is coming back. A great hero, literally imagine at the age of 21. Recently, a British film company did something called tracing the footsteps of Alexander the Great. They followed by boat, by jeep, by plane, the path he took. And they were astounded that how could you have a whole army walking across, Europe and Asia Minor, if you will. But what's interesting, they get to a small town in Turkey. This is 1,000, 2,000 years later. And in the center of the village, there's a puppeteer. There's all little kids sitting around in the dust. And this puppeteer is having this puppet show. What he's showing is, here's Alexander the Great fighting with the evil mayor, and the kids are all cheering, and of course Alexander wins and the mayor loses, and the kids are all happy. 100 miles away in another village in Turkey, there is the same scene. There's a puppeteer and all the kids sitting around, and now it's Alexander the monster who comes to destroy the village and fights the good mayor, and the kids are all booing him. How could it be? Is it Alexander the Great or Alexander the monster? It turns out it's both of them. Because what was brilliant about Alexander as a soldier, when he was on his way from Greece to India, he knew he had to have a safe route coming back. And so what he did was he took all the resources from one town and put it in another town. So in fact, they looted, they robbed one town in order to make the second town their safe town coming back. And they always left some soldiers to intermarry. So Alexander is great in this village. He is terrible in this other village. So again, it's, unlike the Joseph Campbell's myths, heroism is a more complex phenomenon. And that's why it makes it interesting to study. Examples like this, that how could a terrorist be a hero in one place and a monster in another? How could Alexander the Great be a villain and a hero? How could Columbus be, one of our great American heroes, and yet, now that we understand what he did, he's one of the great monsters. And so that's why I think, for me, studying heroism in a classroom in research is fascinating, and it's back to Christian's long opening statement. This is why I'm devoting the rest of my life to studying this and sowing the seeds of heroism in the world.
Good.
I think with that we probably should end.